So here's a brief overview of the tools we'll be using for this DVD. We've got a vast assortment of goodies that we'll be using, and the PDF is going to get into them in more detail, but I'm just going to touch on all of them for you. So what we're using here is primarily, we're going to be using the eCollar Technologies Mini Educator 300, right? And Mini, because it's actually pretty small. The receiver is really small, which is great for smaller dogs, but it's actually even useful for bigger dogs. We use them on about, I'd say 99% of dogs that come through. They're super easy to use. They have amazing customer service. They've got a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of gadgets for the price. So this is a highly recommended tool. I'm going to run through a little bit of what it does for you just so you can get a kind of brief overview of how it works. But then once again, the PDF is going to take you step by step by step. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn this baby on. So on the back, we've got a little button here that says on, off, and light. I'm going to press and hold that for a couple seconds. You should see it come on. There we go. And then I'm going to take the magnet here, which is the red dot, and I'm going to touch it to the red dot magnet here on the receiver. I'm going to touch, and boom, there we go. Now we've got a green light. That green light blinking means that we're good to go. Now, a couple other features on here. One is if you press and hold down this intensity dial, if you press and hold this down, you actually lock the button, or you actually lock the dial. I can turn as much as I want, but it's not moving. Some folks like the dial, they like to lock it in. I prefer not to. I don't ever lock the dial. I always want to be able to be organic and moving and fluid on my remote with my dog. So I never use the lock feature, but I just want to let you know it's there. So I'm going to unlock it by pressing and holding again, and now we're rocking and rolling, ready to move. A few of the other features: it's got an M and a C button on the back. So M and C basically sets up how your buttons function. That means that it's got momentary with the black button right here and continuous with the red button right there. If I press M, then I get 27. If I press M with the red button, then I'm boosted. And I don't want to use boost. I know some trainers will use boost. I'm not a fan of it. Once again, I want you to be organically interacting with your dog as your dog's state of mind vacillates, moves around. I don't want you jumping 10, 15, 20 with a boost button to try and find that perfect level. I think it's really hard to find the right level with your dog when you're boosting. So I press this button again, and it takes me back to M and C. Now that means, once again, I'm at organic, meaning no matter what I turn, that's what I get with my remote here. So if I'm working with a dog that works on 12 and the dog starts to run away and I need more level, I just dial and make it happen. It's very easy to dial with one hand. They've designed it to where you can easily do that, and that's the way that we work it. So I heavily recommend against the boost. I'd much rather everybody goes with an organic approach to this. There's a lot of different methods out there, and this is a really versatile tool, so you can use it for a lot of different ways. The way we're going to be using it is we're not going to use the Nick button. We're only going to shoot for the red button here, which makes your life very easy, right? The difference is with continuous, the dog feels the sensation or the stimulation as long as you hold the button. We can use it for a very short duration, little conversation communication with a quick tap, or we can use it for a longer continued conversation, which is very advantageous for the teaching process when we're using very low levels, but also for emergency situations when, say, your dog's running away from you and you need to press and hold the button in order for a safety situation to get your dog back to you. So continuous, you have a lot more flexibility. It has a more universal application, and that's why we use it. It's easier for owners just to focus on the one button. So it's also got a couple of other neat features. One is that it's got a light feature on here, which is pretty cool if you're out walking your dog at night and you want to be able to see where your dog is. So use the same on and off button. You give it a tap, and boom. We got this cool flashing feature, right? So your dog's out, you know, running around, you're having a nice like dusk or night hike with your dog, and you can actually see. You press it again, same button, hold it for a second, and now full light. I hit the button again, and it all goes away, and we're back to our regular stuff. This black button on the side actually is vibrate or pager, some folks refer to it as, and basically it's just like a pager. You press it, and you won't be able to hear it, I don't think, but you press it, you see the light goes off, and it just vibrates, right? So it vibrates like an old school pager. So some folks will be apt to want to use that because they feel more comfortable about a pager than thinking about stimulation. But the reality is that the pager feature doesn't have any control, right? So it's one size fits all, and it freaks a lot of dogs out. You press pager even though you think dogs aren't going to care about a vibration. They actually do, and it'll freak out a lot of dogs and make them very uncomfortable. So a couple other cool things. This baby is fully waterproof. Both this and this. A lot of people get freaked out when they think about electricity. There's no current running through your dog, actually. So if your dog is in a pool or in a lake or getting a bath or in the rain, there's no fallout from this. It's actually made for hunting dogs and things like that. So your dog can dive in with this, and you could dive in right behind him with this, and everything's going to be okay. And actually, if anything happens, you'll typically see the sensation perception from your dog be a little dissipated than enhanced. So, which is kind of an interesting one. Most people would expect it to be the opposite. And then one other thing I want to talk about is that this one's got a half-mile range. So that means your dog can be at a pretty considerable distance from you, and you can still communicate with it, still get your dog back, still communicate, all that good stuff, which is pretty darn cool.